Have you ever been pushed so far past your breaking point that you said something you can never take back? Today, we're diving into a top-voted Reddit story about a mother-in-law who finally snapped when her boundaries were crossed one too many times. The phone buzzed against the kitchen counter as I was packing Sam's medication into her travel bag. The late afternoon light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the cluttered surface where pill bottles and appointment cards lay scattered like evidence of our family's latest crisis. I should have let it go to voicemail. I was already running behind, and my 20-year-old daughter needed to get some rest before our early morning drive to the specialist. But the name on the screen made me pause. Kat, my daughter-in-law. "Hello, Kat," I answered, wedging the phone between my shoulder and ear as I continued organizing Sam's pills into their daily compartments. "Mom!" Her voice was bright, almost cheerful, which immediately put me on edge. "I just heard about your trip this weekend. Why wasn't I invited?" I stopped what I was doing, my hand frozen over Sam's pill organizer. The familiar knot of tension began forming in my stomach. How had she even found out? We'd been careful to keep the details quiet. Sam wasn't ready to share her medical situation with the extended family yet. "It's not that kind of trip, Kat," I said carefully, using her name deliberately. "It's important, not recreational." "Don't lie to me." Her tone shifted, becoming sharper like a blade finding its edge. "I know it's a mother-daughter weekend, and I can't believe you'd exclude me like this." My jaw tightened as I gripped the phone harder. This was exactly the kind of boundary-pushing behavior that had been wearing me down for months. Ever since she'd married my son 2 years ago, Kat had been determined to insert herself into every aspect of our family dynamic in ways that made me deeply uncomfortable. "Kat, I'm telling you the truth. This isn't a girls' trip. Sam has a medical appointment that requires us to travel out of state. I don't care what kind of trip it is. I'm your daughter too, and I need to be there." The words hit me like a physical blow. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles went white. "No, Kat, you're not my daughter. You're my daughter-in-law." "Same thing," she insisted, her voice rising to a pitch that made me wince. "You're my mom now, and moms don't leave their kids out of important family moments." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar surge of frustration that came with every conversation we'd had over the past 2 years. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, the walls closing in as her words echoed in my ears. Kat's mother had abandoned her when she was 7, leaving her to navigate the foster care system alone. I understood her pain. I really did. But understanding someone's trauma doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own comfort and boundaries to heal it. "Kat, we've talked about this. I'm not comfortable with you calling me mom. Please use my name." "But that's what you are to me." Her voice cracked slightly, and I could hear the desperation creeping in like water seeping through cracks. "You're the only mother figure I have. I need this trip. I need to be included." This wasn't the first time we'd had this conversation. It wasn't even the 10th time. Every family gathering, every phone call, every interaction seemed to circle back to the same issue. Kat's refusal to respect the boundaries I'd clearly established. There was the way she'd cling to me during family photos, her arm wrapped around my waist despite my obvious discomfort with physical affection from anyone but my own children. There were the constant questions about my relationship with my own mother, a woman who had made my childhood a nightmare of criticism and emotional manipulation. Kat couldn't seem to understand why I wouldn't just forgive and forget and rebuild that relationship. "Family sticks together," she'd say, parroting phrases that felt hollow coming from someone who barely knew me. "You should give your mom another chance." But the worst part was how she'd steamroll over every attempt I made to redirect the conversation or establish limits. I'd say, "I don't want to discuss my mother," and she'd respond with, "But I'm just trying to help you heal." I'd ask her to call me by my name, and she'd smile and say, "Okay, Mom," as if I hadn't spoken at all. "Kat," I said now, trying to keep my voice level despite the tremor I could feel building in my chest. "This trip is about Sam's health. It's private, and it's not appropriate for you to be there. I'm part of this family too." The desperation in her voice was palpable now, raw and needy. I'm your daughter and daughters support each other. I have every right to be there. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the stress of worrying about Sam's condition, or maybe it was the culmination of 2 years of having my clearly stated boundaries ignored and trampled. The afternoon shadows seemed to darken around me as whatever patience I had left finally crumbled. The words came out before I could stop them. I will never be your mother, I said, my voice cutting through her protests like a blade through silk. Just because you married my son doesn't make me your parent. I am not your mom. I will never be your mom, and I need you to leave me the hell alone about it. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow, but she didn't speak. The kitchen felt eerily quiet after the intensity of our conversation. And even if this was a mother-daughter trip, I continued, the floodgates now fully open, you still wouldn't be invited because you aren't my kid. You need to stop pushing yourself into spaces where you don't belong. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking as I set the phone down on the counter. The device felt heavier than it should have, weighted with the finality of what I'd just done. I realized I was breathing hard, as if I'd just run a marathon, and the late afternoon light suddenly felt too harsh against my skin. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing again. This time it was my son. Mom, what the hell? His voice was tight with anger, strained in a way that reminded me of when he was a teenager caught between loyalty to his friends and respect for family rules. Kat is crying her eyes out. She told me what you said to her. I told her the truth, I said, though my voice sounded weaker than I'd intended. You were completely out of line. You know about her background. You know how sensitive she is about family stuff, and you deliberately hurt her. There was something protective and fierce in his tone that made my chest tighten with a different kind of pain. I've been patient for 2 years, I shot back, feeling defensive. I've explained my boundaries over and over again, and she refuses to respect them. I'm not responsible for managing her trauma at the expense of my own comfort. She just wants to feel like she belongs in this family. She does belong in this family, as your wife, but that doesn't make her my daughter, and I shouldn't have to pretend otherwise just to make her feel better. The argument continued for another 20 minutes, with my son insisting I owed Kat an apology and me standing firm that I'd simply enforced boundaries that should have been respected long ago. By the time we hung up, the kitchen had grown dark around me, and it was clear that this wasn't going away quietly. Over the next few days, the story spread through our extended family like wildfire through dry grass. Some relatives sided with me, saying that Kat needed to respect my wishes and that I had every right to maintain boundaries. Others felt I'd been unnecessarily cruel, especially given Kat's difficult childhood. Phone calls came at all hours, each family member weighing in with their opinion on what I should have done differently. The worst part was watching Sam get caught in the crossfire. Family members were asking her about the trip, wanting to know if it really was medical or if she was complicit in excluding Kat. My daughter, already stressed about her upcoming appointment and the uncertainty surrounding her condition, now had to field questions and criticism from relatives who felt entitled to details about her private medical situation. As I watched Sam's shoulders tense every time her phone buzzed with another family member's opinion, I felt the weight of my choices settling around me like a heavy coat. The house felt different now, quieter, but not peacefully so. It was the kind of quiet that comes after something breaks. Had I been protecting my boundaries, or had I been cruel? Was there a middle ground I'd missed, some way to be firm without being devastating? The questions circled in my mind like vultures, picking at my certainty. But then I remembered all the times I'd tried to be gentle, all the patient explanations that had fallen on deaf ears, all the moments when I'd swallowed my discomfort to keep the peace. I thought about the way my own mother had trampled every boundary I'd ever tried to set, and how that had shaped years of my life in ways I was still untangling. Sometimes I realized as I sat in my darkened kitchen, boundaries aren't respected until they're enforced with absolute clarity. Sometimes being kind means being cruel first, and sometimes protecting yourself requires disappointing people who desperately want something from you that you simply cannot give. The question now was whether my family would understand that distinction, or whether I'd have to live with being the villain in someone else's story of healing. Either way, I thought as I finally turned on the lights and finished packing Sam's medication, some prices are worth paying for the right to remain yourself. That's the whole story for today. Honestly, I think this mom was protecting herself after 2 years of having her clearly stated boundaries completely ignored. Sometimes you have to be harsh to be heard. On the Slytherin scale, I'd give her a 4 out of 10. She used some verbal stupefy spells, but only after being pushed to her absolute limit. So, not the jerk here. What do you think? Was she protecting her boundaries or going too far? Drop your verdict in the comments. That's all for today's story. Hope you enjoyed the ride. If you did, give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers.